Before everything changed, life felt normal, routine even. Weekends were for grocery runs and cozy dinners, workdays ended with wine on the couch, and laughter still lived in the walls of our home. Adam and I weren't perfect, but we were stable, or at least I thought we were. He wasn't the loud, expressive type. He didn't shower me with compliments every day, but his love was always there, in the way he made my coffee just right, or remembered what side of the bed I preferred. His love was quiet, steady, patient. Ethan had been in my life for over a decade. We met in middle school and somehow never grew apart. He was the kind of friend who remembered my favorite snacks, who texted memes at midnight, who always knew when something was wrong just by the way I said hello. We had years of inside jokes, photos from road trips, and a habit of texting constantly about nothing and everything. To me, Ethan was safe, familiar, like a brother who never drifted away. That's what I always told myself. But Adam saw it differently. He never made demands, but his silence said enough. He'd raise an eyebrow when my phone lit up with Ethan's name for the third time in an hour. He'd fall quiet when I laughed a little too hard at Ethan's jokes over dinner. He never accused, never raised his voice, just looked tired. I remember one evening we were folding laundry, and he gently said, "Sometimes I feel like the third wheel in my own marriage." I laughed, thinking he was being dramatic. I kissed his cheek and told him not to be silly. Ethan was just my best friend, that's all. But Adam didn't smile. He just nodded slowly, like he didn't believe me, or maybe like he believed me, but it didn't matter anymore. It wasn't the first time he mentioned it. There had been small comments before, casual observations. "He calls a lot, doesn't he? Or you tell him more than you tell me." And every time I brushed it off, told him he was overthinking, that he was just being insecure. Then came the night that changed everything. We were sitting in the living room. The TV was on, but neither of us was really watching. I was on my phone, laughing at something Ethan had sent me. Adam looked over, his face calm, almost too calm. Then he said, "Can you block him?" For me, I blinked, stunned. "What, are you serious?" "I'm serious," my stomach twisted. "That's ridiculous. You're being controlling, insecure, jealous for no reason." He didn't argue, he didn't plead, he just looked at me quietly, deeply, like he was trying to see something in my face. After a long moment, he stood up, walked to the door, grabbed his keys, and left. He didn't say a single word after that, and I didn't stop him. The morning light filtered through the blinds, but the room felt colder than usual. The silence wasn't peaceful. It was loud, heavy, almost unnatural. The space beside me in bed was untouched, the blanket still tucked, his pillow undented, no scent of coffee, no sound of the shower running, just stillness. His closet door stood open, half-empty hangers swaying slightly as if someone had rushed through them. A few drawers were left slightly ajar. Shoes that usually sat neatly by the door were gone. So were his car keys. I picked up my phone and called, then again. No answer, no message, no explanation. A new text came in. "Ethan. Hey, everything okay? You didn't respond last night?" Fingers hesitated over the screen. Part of me wanted to ignore him, but I needed someone to talk to, someone who would understand. I told him what happened, that Adam had asked me to block him, that I called him insecure, that he left. "That's insane," Ethan replied. "You didn't do anything wrong." I agreed, at least I told myself I did. I told Ethan that Adam had overreacted, that he had no reason to be jealous, that friendships shouldn't be treated like threats, that it wasn't fair for a husband to make such demands. But the apartment felt unfamiliar without Adam. Everything looked the same, yet felt hollow. His keys weren't on the hook. His coffee mug wasn't in the sink. His toothbrush was gone. A strange ache settled in my chest. Not panic, not guilt, just a weight I couldn't shake. On the kitchen table sat a folded piece of paper. No envelope, just my name in his handwriting. "You chose him. I'm not going to fight for a spot in my own marriage." 10 words. That was it. My hand trembled slightly as I read it again, and again. My mind tried to twist the meaning, soften it, excuse it. But it was clear he hadn't left to clear his head. He hadn't stormed out in anger. He had walked away for good. I stood in the kitchen staring at that note for what felt like hours. At first, I still believed I was right. I hadn't cheated. I hadn't hidden anything. I hadn't done anything physical. Why should I have to choose between my husband and a best friend? But something about that note kept echoing inside me. Something about the word fight. He didn't want to fight for space in his own marriage. He didn't want to feel like a guest in his own life. The more I read it, the less certain I felt. Maybe it wasn't about Ethan, maybe it was about me and what I chose to protect. And the worst part was I wasn't sure if I could take it back. Texts came in one after another. Friends checking in, asking what happened, offering comfort, sending emojis and affirmations. Most of them had already heard the story. The version I gave them was short, clear, and admittedly slanted. Adam left because I wouldn't block my best friend. He called me disloyal and just walked out. The responses were what I expected. He's being dramatic. You're allowed to have friends. That's toxic behavior. He needs therapy. Some even joked about how jealous men are a walking red flag. I nodded along as I read the messages, wanting to believe all of it, wanting to feel backed up, justified, safe in the arms of those who knew me. But then my sister called. Her voice wasn't light or sympathetic. She listened carefully as I repeated the same explanation I had given everyone else. When I was done, she didn't respond right away, just silence on the other end. Then came the words that stuck. If the situation were reversed and he had a female best friend who texted all day, called at midnight, hugged him just a little too long, would you be okay with it? The question hit differently. It wasn't judgmental, just honest. It didn't come with a tone of blame, just clarity. And suddenly, something shifted. The excuses I had rehearsed started to sound hollow in my own ears. Memories started replaying like film clips. Late-night phone calls with Ethan when Adam was already asleep beside me. Jokes that didn't land when Adam was in the room, but made Ethan and me double over with laughter. Inside phrases that shut Adam out. Not on purpose, but effectively. The way Ethan touched my back when he leaned in to talk, the way his hugs lingered half a second too long. It never felt wrong, but now it didn't feel right either. There were other moments too. Times Adam had quietly left the room when Ethan dropped by. Times he looked at me, not angry but tired, as if he'd been standing in the rain too long. And I told myself he was just sensitive, overthinking, insecure. But maybe he was just unheard. I wanted to defend myself. I hadn't crossed any lines, at least not the obvious ones. No kissing, no secrets, no cheating. But emotional lines are blurry, harder to see, harder to admit. And guilt began to settle in, not like a storm, but like fog, creeping in slowly, dimming my clarity. Not guilt because of Ethan, but guilt because I hadn't chosen Adam's comfort when it mattered. Guilt because I'd brushed off the only person who had asked to be prioritized. Days had passed, and I still hadn't heard from him. Each hour that went by made the silence louder. My phone buzzed again. It was Ethan. But I didn't want to answer, not this time. The messages became more frequent. Morning check-ins, lunch updates, evening calls that lasted longer than they used to. He started dropping by unannounced, always with something in hand. Takeout from my favorite restaurant, coffee just how I liked it. A movie he thought would cheer me up. His voice was soft, his presence constant, and for a while it felt comforting, familiar, like a lifeline thrown in the middle of all the confusion. I told myself he was just being a good friend. Every time he showed up, I let him in. Every time he texted, I replied quickly. It felt good to not be alone, to have someone who seemed to understand, who didn't judge or question, who filled the silence Adam had left behind. The guilt stayed in the background, quiet but present. I hadn't told Ethan to stop. I hadn't pushed him away. One evening, as we sat on the couch watching a movie, something shifted. The way he looked at me lingered a little too long. His hand brushed mine and didn't pull back. He laughed softly at something I said and leaned in closer than he needed to. I pretended not to notice, eyes glued to the screen, heart picking up speed. The credits rolled and the room fell quiet. Without warning, his hand cupped my face, and he leaned in, eyes closing. My body froze. "What are you doing?" He blinked, surprised like he didn't expect resistance. Come on, he's gone. You know we've always had something. The room stopped breathing. The words hung in the air like smoke, choking and thick. Always had something. Always. Every defense I'd built for him, every argument I'd made to protect our friendship, shattered. Adam hadn't imagined it. He hadn't been paranoid or controlling. He'd seen something I refused to see, and now, with one sentence, Ethan had confirmed it. You need to leave. He didn't move. Are you serious? Now. He stood, face tight with frustration. You'll come around, he muttered as he grabbed his jacket. This was always going to happen. The door shut behind him, but the echo stayed. The room felt colder. The silence, heavier than ever. The person I had defended so fiercely had only been waiting for his chance. Adam wasn't wrong. He was hurt, but never wrong. The trust I had placed in the wrong person finally cracked open into truth. And this time, there was no one left to argue with. The apartment felt unfamiliar. Every corner carried echoes of a life that no longer felt whole. The framed photos on the shelf suddenly looked different. Two people smiling, but something behind the eyes now seemed off. The anniversary card tucked behind a vase still had his handwriting in it. To the love of my life, it read, 4 simple words that once felt like forever. Now they felt like a question I couldn't answer. The couch where we used to sit together felt too big, the silence too loud. Every part of the room reminded me of something I didn't notice before. The way he used to warm my hands when they were cold. How he always brought me water before bed. Little things I once brushed off, now magnified by his absence. The note sat where I'd left it on the table. I read it again, slowly this time. You chose him. I'm not going to fight for a spot in my own marriage. At first it made me angry. It felt unfair, like he had just given up without a real fight. But reading it now, with everything that had happened, the words hit differently. He hadn't left because he was jealous. He hadn't walked out because I had a friend. He left because I took someone else's side while he stood alone, asking for a place that should have been his by default. He felt like a stranger in his own home, and I made him feel that way. The worst part wasn't just losing him, it was knowing I'd made him feel small, unheard, unchosen. Fingers trembling, I picked up my phone. Ethan's name was still in my favorites, his chat pinned at the top. Without hesitation, I opened the thread and blocked the number. No message, no explanation, just silence. My heart pounded as I opened a new message and began typing. I'm sorry. The words felt too small. I erased them. You were right. I didn't see what you saw, and I should have. I defended someone who crossed a line, and in doing that, I crossed one too. I made you feel like you didn't matter, like your voice didn't count. I'm not proud of how I handled things, and I won't ask you to come back. I just wanted you to know you were never wrong. I see it now. I'm so sorry. There was no way to make it perfect, no way to undo what had been done. But honesty was all that remained. I hit send. The screen stayed blank, no dots, no reply. And for the first time, I felt the full weight of what I had lost. 3 days passed in complete silence. Each morning started the same, waking up, checking the phone, pretending not to feel the disappointment when there was nothing. The days dragged on, every moment replaying the last conversation, the last glance, the last breath between two people who once felt unbreakable. Then, just as the stillness had become unbearable, a message arrived. Thanks for saying that. I needed to hear it, but I'm not ready to talk yet. No greeting, no closure, just honesty. Short, quiet, and heavy. It wasn't forgiveness. It wasn't a door reopening. But it wasn't silence anymore. It meant the words had reached him, that he read them, that maybe deep down he understood. The message stayed open on the screen for hours. Read and reread. Every word studied. There was no pressure in it, no blame, just distance, a boundary he had the right to set. That night, sleep didn't come easily. Thoughts tumbled like loose papers in wind, how things had gotten so far off track, how signs were missed, how voices were drowned out by pride. Blame shifted from one side to the other until it landed squarely where it belonged, on choices, on neglect, on silence. The next morning began differently. Instead of waiting by the phone, a different call was made. A quiet voice answered, asking how soon an appointment could be scheduled. A therapist's office became the new place of reflection. Sitting across from someone with no stake in the outcome made the truth clearer. There were patterns that had gone unnoticed, needs that were ignored, not just Adam's, but personal ones too. The idea of emotional boundaries had once felt foreign. It had always seemed like love should come without rules. But now it was easy to see how blurred lines lead to broken hearts, how trust can be worn thin by repeated justifications, how damage doesn't always come from actions, it comes from the refusal to listen. Journaling began as a suggestion from the therapist. At first, the words came slow and guarded, but day by day the pages filled. Stories, memories, moments that now held new meaning, questions written with no answers, regrets shaped into sentences, a record of a heart trying to understand its own cracks. There were no illusions about what came next, no dreams of dramatic reunions or sudden forgiveness. The silence could last forever, or not. That part couldn't be controlled. But what could be changed was the person looking back in the mirror, the one learning what accountability felt like, what growth required. Each step forward wasn't about winning someone back. It was about becoming someone better, someone more aware, more careful with love, more honest with intentions. Whether Adam returned or remained a part of the past, the goal stayed the same. Healing had begun. And for the first time, it wasn't about fixing the marriage. It was about fixing the self. The cafe felt unfamiliar despite having visited it countless times. The wait between ordering and seeing him stretched like hours, though it was only minutes. When he walked in, the change was immediate. Less weight on his body, more weight in his eyes. The way he scanned the room before spotting the table said everything. Cautious, not cold. Guarded, not angry. He sat down without much of a greeting. No hug, no smile. Just a quiet hey. The coffee between them steamed gently, untouched. Small talk tried to fill the space, but failed. It wasn't a day for small talk. He spoke first. Why was his comfort more important than mine? The words didn't come out sharp. They weren't thrown like knives. They were soft, tired. The kind of question someone asks after they have asked themselves the same thing 1,000 times and never got an answer. No defense followed, just truth. I didn't see it that way, not then. I thought I was protecting something innocent. I didn't realize I was hurting you in the process. The air shifted, not lighter, but clearer. No fog left between the lines. He nodded once. Not in agreement, just acknowledgement, like he'd been waiting to hear it, even if it didn't fix anything. I felt invisible, he said, like I was always in second place in my own marriage. Every time I brought it up, you made me feel like I was the problem. And eventually, I believed I was. Apologies came, but not rehearsed ones. They weren't crafted to win him back, just spoken because they needed to be. I'm sorry, I didn't listen. I was too busy proving I was right to realize I was wrong. He looked out the window for a long time before speaking again. I appreciate that really, but I'm still figuring out how I feel. Being apart has been quiet, and I needed quiet for once. I don't know what this means for us yet. The next question hovered in the air before being asked. Do you still love me? A pause, then a breath, then the truth. I don't know, I think I do, but it's buried under a lot of hurt right now. I'm healing and I need space to keep doing that. No expectations followed, just understanding. Because love, even when it exists, isn't always enough to close a wound. He stood to leave, hesitating for just a second before offering a brief hug. No promises, no talk of next steps, just warmth, shared for a moment, then gone. As he walked out, the coffee sat cold and untouched. But the conversation had been enough, for now. Mornings began earlier. No more lying in bed, staring at the ceiling, waiting for a message that never came. The phone stayed face down, its notifications silent. Breakfast became a quiet ritual, music playing softly, eggs cooking on the stove, coffee brewing without the usual ache in the chest. The silence that once screamed now offered something different, space. Social media went untouched. No scrolling through filtered lives, no late-night glances at old photos. The need to see what he was doing, who he might be with, faded. The ache dulled, replaced by something gentler. Reflection filled the gaps once occupied by noise. Long walks became a habit. Without headphones, without distraction, just fresh air and thoughts, steps syncing with breaths, each one lighter than the last. Somewhere between the pavement and the passing breeze, a realization took root. Waiting was a choice, and so was healing. The journal pages filled faster, no longer just about pain, but about growth. Patterns unfolded, times when boundaries weren't kept, when silence was chosen over communication, when ego won over understanding. The letters turned from blame to accountability, from confusion to clarity. Emotional betrayal didn't always arrive in the shape of cheating. Sometimes it looked like neglect, like choosing someone else's feelings again and again while the person beside you quietly faded into the background. It became clear that loyalty isn't just about staying faithful, it's about protecting someone's place in your life, even when they're not demanding it. Loving someone doesn't guarantee they'll stay. It doesn't mean you get to keep them once you've broken something essential. Some people leave, not because they stopped loving you, but because they had to love themselves more. And sometimes that person is right to walk away. The final letter took hours to write. No begging, no pleading, no twisting words to fix what had been done. Just truth, just gratitude. I understand now. I see the weight you carried, and I'm sorry for not helping you hold it. Thank you for being patient, for being kind even when you were hurt. I don't know if we'll find our way back to each other, and I'm not writing this to ask for that. I just wanted you to know I'm learning, and I'm better because of you. No expectation followed. Just peace. The kind that comes from no longer trying to rewrite the past. The letter was sent. The phone was set down. The breath came easier. Letting go wasn't loud or final. It didn't come with tears or dramatic goodbyes. It came with stillness, with acceptance, and with the quiet knowledge that healing had finally begun. 2 weeks passed quietly. Then, without warning, a knock echoed through the apartment. No call, no message beforehand. Just him, standing at the door, holding nothing but a calm expression and something unreadable in his eyes. There was no dramatic entrance, no bitterness in his stance, just presence, solid, real, and unexpected. The moment stretched between them. No one rushed to speak. Then, softly, the words came. I read your letter. A pause. I still don't know the future, but I see the change in you. No promises, no declarations, just honesty, gently laid down like a fragile truth between them. The invitation inside wasn't spoken, it simply happened. He stepped in, and they sat together at the table like they used to, but everything felt different, not broken anymore, just fragile, as if both were aware that speaking too quickly or too much might ruin the moment. The conversation began slowly, carefully. No blame was thrown, no wounds reopened. There was only room for clarity. I never wanted you to choose between me and your friend, he said. I just needed to know I mattered, that I came first. This time, there was no defense, no justifications, just a nod of understanding, quiet agreement that things weren't handled the way they should have been. Talk turned toward what came next, not getting back to how things used to be, but starting over with new expectations, new habits, and a deeper understanding of each other's needs. Both agreed it couldn't be forced. It had to be rebuilt carefully, with patience and accountability on both sides. Couples therapy became part of the plan, not as a desperate attempt to save something dying, but as a tool to grow something new. A way to learn how to communicate better, how to listen without waiting to respond, how to hear without hurt. Boundaries were discussed, not in a cold, rule-based way, but with mutual respect, clear, honest, and fair. Emotional availability, friendship lines, digital communication, everything laid out openly, not to control, but to protect. It wasn't about forgetting what had happened, it was about making sure nothing like it could happen again. No one called it a reunion, no one said the words, "We're back together." But there was coffee, there was laughter, shy and cautious. There was sitting on the couch, not touching, but close enough to feel the warmth return. There were still cracks in the foundation, but now Both had picked up the tools to fix them. No more pretending it wasn't broken, no more waiting for the other to make the first move. It wasn't perfect, but it was honest, and that was enough. For now. Everything changed slowly, almost quietly, like the way seasons shift without asking permission. Looking back, the biggest moments weren't loud or dramatic. They were the ones where truth settled in like dust, soft but impossible to ignore. What began as one decision, refusing to block someone, spiraled into something much deeper. And now there's no denying what it cost. Emotional boundaries matter, more than people like to admit. It's easy to convince yourself you haven't done anything wrong when there's no kiss, no secret meeting, no lies spoken out loud, but betrayal doesn't need to touch skin to leave a scar. Sometimes it lives in the little things. Who you text first when something good happens, who gets your laughter, who sees your full attention, who comes second in a space where they should come first. There was no affair, not in the way people define it, no cheating in the traditional sense, but hearts know what logic tries to deny. And his heart knew it had been pushed aside, not by force, not by cruelty, but by slow and steady neglect. That's the betrayal that's hardest to see until it's already done its damage.